Hello everyone, today we will continue working on the Doom Cube mod for the Micron. As you can see, the gantry is back in place now. I didn't do the wiring yet and I'll get to that, but one more thing I did other than the mini start burner which I covered in the last video. As you can see, now the tool head moves up and down like this. So this is like war on tap. This is boop, and I'll link it in the description below. This is still in testing. You can't find the files on GitHub if you really want to, but you know, just a warning about that. I think the second or third beta version installed here, and I know there's another one around the corner, and yeah, they're still working on it, is the point basically. But if you like to live dangerously like I do, you can find the files there. The bottom deck panels are also in place now, and I got rid of the diffusion film on this bottom top deck panel, the transparent one, and so you can just see the black of the bottom deck panel here. I'm going to switch this clear panel with a different panel once I place another order with send consent. There's a minimum order total, so I'm not going to place an order just for this, but once I place an order for something else, I'm also going to replace this panel with something opaque, and I'm getting rid of the bottom RGB LEDs. That was a stupid idea. But yeah, bottom electronics chamber is mostly ready as well. I'll show that in a second. The top, I started working on the top as well, so you can see that I got rid of the DIN rails, and instead I have this plastic 3D printed piece here to mount the electronics. I just couldn't make it work with the DIN rail. It just was too high, and the heat sinks for the step sticks, they were always too tall, and they always hit the top panel. I couldn't make it work, so I got rid of the DIN rails, and yeah, this works too. I use the same screws that I used for mounting the DIN rails to mount this plastic 3D printed bracket, which was printed on the War on 2. And yeah, as you can see, everything is in here. I still need to do the wiring from the bottom electronics chamber to the top electronics chamber, which is the reason why a lot of stuff isn't connected to this. There's going to be a custom PCB here. I'll talk more about that later in the video. So yeah, that's for connecting the bottom electronics to the top electronics, just to make wiring easier. Again, I'll talk more about that later in the video. As I said, the tool head isn't connected either, and you might notice this thing coming out of the RJ11 jack of the Octopus here. So if you don't know what this RJ11 jack is for, it's for CAN bus. The Octopus actually has a built-in CAN transceiver, so I'm just grabbing the CAN from there using an old telephone wire. I just stripped and soldered an JST-XH on that, and I'll connect the CAN cable to this. So yeah, from here I'll connect the tool head with a CAN cable, and I'm behind here. I'm planning on mounting a big 3 tag EBB SP. No, not SP, sorry, EBB, these names are so fucking confusing. EBB 36, I think, whatever, I'll link it in the description below, and you'll probably see it later in the video too. The NEMA 14 version of this CAN toolhead board. So yeah, I'm waiting for the delivery of that, so that's why I haven't wired any of the toolhead. I'm going to get rid of most of the wires in that drag chain, and then obviously the A and B motors and the Y limits, which still have to travel up that drag chain. Oh, and the chamber thermistor back there. So I'll wire those to here once I get rid of those wires. So yeah, that's most of the progress so far. The bed is also mounted in place. Got rid of the Z limit switch back here. Yeah, because I have the boop here, so I don't need that anymore. But yeah, I guess let me show you the bottom electronics chamber too. And here is the bottom side of the printer. As you can see, it's a bit crowded right now because I didn't do any wire management, but as you can see, the Z drives are in place. The power supply is in place too, and that is also mounted with a 3D printed part here. So yeah, I made another mistake with the panels, and with this mount, the mistake is the power supply mounting holes are a bit too close to the front of the printer, and yeah, it doesn't clear the Z drives. I think that's because the model Z drives, the one in the 3D model, the CAD file, they're a bit shorter than the ones I'm using. These are the ones that are shipped with the DFH kit. Yeah, I had to design a part for that, and yeah, with that it works. You can see that there is another threaded insert thing here, so that's for a custom PCB. I'm working on a custom PCB design for this that will, I'll basically plug all the Z drives, the power supply, the bed heater, the bed thermistor, the air filter, and yeah, all that, I'll plug that into this PCB, and that PCB there will be the same PCB will be on the other side as well, on the top chamber, and I'll just run wires between those PCBs, and it will make wiring a bit easier, I think, instead of having to run every single wire through these holes. And yeah, that also means I have to extend every single wire here, and yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. So I think that the way I'm doing this will be a bit easier, but that means I need to design and order that PCB, which will be later. So yeah, that's the progress so far. I'll be back once there is more to show. And here is the PCB I was talking about. It's a pretty simple thing, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just very quickly, it's basically a breakout for these JST-XHs, which are unpopulated, so the 4 Z motors, 2 connectors for the air filter fans, but they're connected to the same source, so I just need one signal to control those 2 fans on the air filter, bed thermistor, chamber cooling fan, so for the bottom electronics chamber, again connected to the same control signal. And these 2 are kind of extra, chamber thermistor / Z limit. I'm not using either one of those. Z limit switch I don't need with Voron boop, and the chamber thermistor I have one, but that's mounted on the gantry, so I don't need this, but I had 2 extra pins and figured I might as well have it. For example, let's say the Voron boop doesn't work, and I can add the Z limit switch back in there. So yeah, it's just extra, and I think it's a good idea to have those. Then there are these 4 6-pin JST-XHs. You connect the wires that run between the top and bottom electronics chambers here. You have the exact same PCB on the top electronics chamber too, so yeah, you have a breakout for the same wires on the top electronics chamber too, so you can just connect the motor 0 to the motor 0 and motor 1 to motor 1, I don't know, fan to fan, etc. So just makes wiring easier in my opinion. And there are these screw terminals, again for the same thing, so connect the 24 volt and ground onto power supply here, for example, or here, and then have a pair of wires running to the top electronics chamber using the same slots and the extrusions, and yeah, have the 2 pairs here for the bed heater as well, of course. So yeah, just run the 24 volts to the top. And the reason there are extra screw terminals here are because the Big 3 Octopus has multiple power inputs, and you need to connect wires to every single one of those, plus the candle headboard requires its own inputs too on top of that. So yeah, you need multiple connections, and it's just easier to have multiple screw terminals rather than shoving every single wire into the same screw terminal. That's why I designed this like this. Yeah, the PCB I ordered, and it's already here. So I'll finish working on the electronics and I'll be back. So the last recording was about a month ago, and I did a decent amount of progress on the Micron. So as you can see, first of all, the electronics are now fully wired. Here is the custom PCB that I was talking about, so it's mounted here. And there is one on the bottom electronics as well. I'll put a picture of that on the screen right now, but yeah, I just don't want to flip the printer. But yeah, both the electronics chambers are now ready, as you can see. Also, I did all the wire management in here too. I know it's not the prettiest wire management job ever, but yeah, it is pretty well managed, I think. So yeah, it's all ready. The front door, I didn't do a latch system like I was talking about in the previous video, so yeah, there is no latch, but this actually, after I put the rubber tape in place, this actually does tend to stay in place. It seals pretty well. So there is the thin rubber foam tape here and here, and the thicker rubber foam tape I used on here too, so it seals against this extrusion. I didn't put any tape on here. Yeah, I think this still will work pretty well. I tried to, I loosened those screws and kind of pushed the door as far right as possible. Yeah, it should work well enough, I think, and if it doesn't, we can figure it out later. Also, since the last video, I reprinted these extrusion slot covers so that they actually, don't curl out on the tops and bottoms of those anymore. And I used the same extrusion slot covers to create the frame around the door like I was talking about in the previous video. I didn't actually print it like a frame though, like I was talking about in the previous video. I just cut these to length, and yeah, if you don't look at it too closely, I think it looks pretty good. So yeah, that is good enough. Also, since the last video, I've mounted the spool holder back in place. I had to reprint this too. This is reprinted now. I had to get rid of the panel mounting spacing thing because, well, the panel isn't mounted the same way as it is on the standard Micron, on the Micron Doom Cube, so reprinted this. So yeah, as you can see, all the wiring is done, all the belt routing is done, it's tensioned, it's ready. I might have to move the bed a bit forwards, that's one thing I didn't do. Boop is thicker than the standard Micron carriage, so yeah, I'll just have to move the bed a bit forward. I don't remember if I did that yet or not, but if I didn't, I'll do that later in the video. But what's mainly left is doing the firmware and config stuff, so I have to flash the firmware to this, I have to flash new firmware to the Octopus here for the CAN bus, so I need to reconfigure everything for the Voron boop here and for the CAN bus toolhead, and yeah, obviously some of the stuff changed on the Octopus too, so I have to do all that. So I did all that firmware stuff, and I just started my first-ish print. I'll explain the ish in a second, but there were some problems in between, so yeah, this took me a while, and then yeah, life and fucking Murphy's Law. I think it's been a few months since the last recording is the point, but yeah, again, I started my first-ish print finally. There is the EBB 36, I think, whatever the Pancake NEMA 14 version is on there, so that's the CAN bus thing, and that was one of the main challenges, is getting that to work through the RJ11 jack of the Big 3 Tech Octopus up here, and I just couldn't. It just never really worked, and I spent way too much time on that, and I eventually developed a different solution. So you can see this USB drive shaped thing in here with a JST-XH connector. So that is a new PCB I designed, and I will make a dedicated video about that very soon, but that's a USB to CAN bus adapter. It's called PiCAN, since you plug it into your Raspberry Pi. But with that, I was finally able to solve those problems. Another problem I had was with the Voron boop, and as you can see, it's still not perfect because its quad gantry leveling is taking a bit longer than it should, which means it's still not perfect. But the last version of the boop I had, it just was very unreliable, and I eventually ended up reprinting a new version. I don't know which I don't know if the last version I had was an official beta or some file that was shared on the DualCube server, but I think it was close to beta 3 at least. What I have here on here right now is Boop beta 4 that was available on the Boop GitHub repository. I don't know if there are any newer versions of that on the DoomCube server. I didn't bother checking, but yeah, it is working much better. Right now, the reason it's still taking a while is I'm actually missing one screw, the screw that goes from the carriage to the mini stealth burner on the back side. That's missing, and that's causing a bit too much flex. I'm pretty sure that's the reason it took a bit longer than what it should take. But yeah, other than that, it's working fine. I just need to figure out what I can do about that screw, and I might need to reprint the motor plate part on the mini stealth burner, because I think the nut in there is loose. I think that's the problem. So anyway, I'll fix that later. But yeah, let's see how the first print goes. Usually I don't do a perfect job when it comes to calibrating the distance from the bed to the nozzle, so it's probably not going to be perfect, but yeah, let's see how that goes. And I said I was going to explain the ish part when I said first ish. So that ish is I did I think 2 prints with the old boop, but it just wasn't working well, as I said. So that's the ish. So it's the first print with this version of the boop, and this and the rest of the firmware configured as well. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Just heating the nozzle. Well, it already heated, it's just waiting for it to cool down a little bit, and it'll start printing. I have the Jontek custom print start macro here. That's also what I use on the Voron 2 and on the Voron 0 too, and it works really well. I'll link that in the description below too. So looks like I need to calibrate the purge line, because the thing it did in the front, that was supposed to be the purge line, but yeah, I need to calibrate that a bit. But yeah, and overall I think that script works really well. That's why I use it. And the reason I like that script a lot is because, well, you can see it's a bit complicated and it does a lot of stuff for you, and yeah, it's very useful in my opinion. So in here it figures out the center of the bed and stuff like that. And then in here is the heating cycle, and one of the things I really like about the heating cycle is it uses the chamber temperature you specified in your print start macro. So here we can see I have set the chamber to 50 degrees. I might actually increase that to either 55 or 60, because I think my chamber when printing ABS plus on my Micron goes as high as 60. I think I'm still in the process of tuning this, but yeah, anyway, you set that, and in the custom G code, not in this custom G code, some other custom G code, yeah, this custom G code in the printer settings, you export the chamber temperature along with your extruder and bed temperatures, and the print start macro starts heating the bed, turns on the fans, etc., and just waits until the chamber reaches the target temperature, which means you don't have to deal with preheating the bed, and yeah, you'll get the best possible results. So that's one of the things I really like about the script, and it also does a purge line, as you saw in the video, but as I said, I need to tune that. I did tune it a bit, still needs some work, but yeah, the purge line is here. So yeah, again, if you're interested in this, it's linked in the description below. So yeah, right now what I'm printing is just a Voron Design test cube, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. I guess you can't really see much from the camera. Pretty sure I'm printing a bit too close to the bed. As I said, it usually don't get it right in the first try, but that's something I can easily calibrate. But anyway, let's see how this print goes. I'll be back once the print finishes. So I know I said I was going to be back after the first print finishes, but this is actually a few days and like 10 or so test cubes later. And the reason for that is I just had too many layer shifting issues like this. And yeah, I also switched to the smooth side from the textured side. Also had some just the probe calibration problems too, and scratched the PI, the smooth side, so I'll replace that. That's easy enough. But yeah, the point is these layer shifts took me a while to figure out, and embarrassingly it was just belt tensioning. After all these years I still can't figure out when it's a belt tensioning problem. It's kind of embarrassing, but whatever. I figured it out eventually, and yeah, this is the first passable test print I got. There is still some things to tune, but the tolerances and all that are pretty good. Like this is the bearing for the top side. Yeah, this is a pretty good start. Yeah, I know I suck at keeping things in frame, but yeah, I did a bunch of 3D printer tuning. So here is a new test cube I printed. I also printed a Banshee, but yeah, and also fixed replaced the PI sheet on this, and fixed the purge line too. This is just some bubbles from me removing the test cube. That's nothing important. I tuned pressure advanced, and then I also tuned input shaper 2 using the nozzle mounted Cuspa. That is a thing you can find it. You can find a similar thing on the Cuspa GitHub repository, not the exact one I used, but it'll do the same thing. Anyway, there are some problems with the Banshee which I will show later, but the test cube, it printed pretty good. I didn't start pushing speeds just yet, so there is that. As I increase speeds, it'll get even worse. I'm getting better at the probe calibration too. I think the main problem is the inconsistency from the probe readings at the moment. As I said, I'm missing one screw on the back, and that is kind of critical for keeping the tool head, like in South burner is mounted with 2 screws right now. The third one is missing, so it can do this. I'm kind of exaggerating it a bit, but hope you get the idea. So once I fix that, I think probe should be a bit better, but I think it's at a fairly decent point at this point too. The Banshee isn't great, so I wasn't able to show much on camera, unfortunately. I'm still trying to improve my video recording. I know I've been saying that for years, but I am actually trying. But anyway, yeah, as I said, the Banshee isn't great. From some angles it looks okay, but from other angles, especially from the backside, you can see a lot of print problems, and I've highlighted some of those in red squares. That's not all of it. There are also some cooling stuff that I didn't bother highlighting because they're obvious enough. So yeah, the point is there is still a lot of work to do. I'll continue working on that off camera. I want to release this video today because, well, this video has been in the works for a while now. Plus, print tuning really isn't that interesting. Yeah, I'll end the video here, and when we do the next Micron video, I don't know when the next Micron video will be, though there are other videos that will be coming very soon to the channel. I'll quickly talk about that in a second. But when we do the next Micron video, I will show you the progress, and then yeah, we'll do whatever we will do in the next Micron video. I don't know what that will be. Like, yeah, whenever there is some mod I want to do, that's when I will do the next Micron episode. But there are other videos in the works, as I said. For example, the PiCAN video is already recorded. I just recorded and edited, so I just need to upload that. And PiCAN is the USB to CAN bus, USB drive shape thing I showed earlier in this video. There is also the War on 2 video that's been in the works for a while now. In the War on 2 video, I want to finish the, well, start and finish the Nevermore Max V2 air filter. And for that, I'm designing a custom PCB, and I ordered my 4th prototype of that. It took a while, but yeah, I'm waiting for the delivery of that, but I think the 4th prototype should work. 3rd time wasn't the charm, but 4th time, I think it should work. Anyway, stay tuned for that. That should be fairly soon too. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like down below, and thanks for watching.